Hey guys, it's Margaret Adele here with my November wrap up. I'm super excited to get to talk about the books I read this month. It was definitely up and down month. I had books that I adored, a new series that I can't wait to jump into, and books that I absolutely hated and really only finished because I needed to be able to understand just how bad they were as a whole. And a lot of these were actually indie ebooks or self-published ebooks. So I'm going to do another video entirely to talk about the best and worst that I've read of indie ebooks. So I won't get too much into the actual just how horrible they were or just how great they were. You'll get a taste of it here, but believe me, this week, or this month rather. So first up this month I read Eve, the Empyrean Age by Toni Gonzalez. This was a sci-fi book. I was reading a lot of sci-fi this month because the NaNoWriMo manuscript that I was writing was sci-fi, and so I kind of wanted to keep in that headspace and look at what the other genre had to offer, what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it. And I'll probably do a video on that too. I'm brimming with ideas lately. This was based off Eve Online, the MMORPG. I've never played it, but I more or less understood. A lot of stuff was thrown at you. This book was very macro. It was very much a entire world and entire races of people in jeopardy and that kind of stuff, and prophecies being fulfilled and all of that. The one part of it that I loved, there was this character called Tybus Heth, and I understand that I'm probably about to spoil it, but A, this book came out like almost 10 years ago. 2, no one ever seems to talk about these kind of books on BookTube anyway. And 3, the reveal happens fairly early-ish on, so there's still some bigger things happening later. But the character Tybus Heth, at first, when you first see him, he looks like this revolutionary leader. And he's willing to die for his cause, and it looks like he's this great guy. And it's revealed about a fifth of the way through the book, fairly early on, he's actually a terrorist. You find out that this cause that he's willing to die for is actually multifaceted and very much linked to he hates this particular race of people and wants them dead. And you don't see that at first, or you get some inklings that, yeah, he's not a big fan of this race of people, but he really wants to bring up his own people that are, struggling under what is essentially extreme capitalism. And so I'm thinking, oh, great, like, I love revolutionary leaders, and nope, he's super racist and also a terrorist. Which I actually loved, that whole, we automatically side with the rebels in any given story. Like, I automatically wanted to side with the Stormcloaks in Skyrim, which is a video game, but the story still counts. So it's this idea of we need to hold back when saying, oh, this guy's obviously a good guy, because no, they could have secret evilness behind them, like he did. So yeah. Got very, very taken aback by that one. The next one, this is actually not the book I read, the ebook I read. This is not even the cover. If you can read that, that is The Breeders by Katie French. I had to find another picture of the cover because I hated this book so much I deleted it. This book sounded more sci-fi than it actually was in the premise. It's about a dystopian world where girls and women in general are almost gone. Which is a premise a lot of dystopian books have, I've found. And this girl, Riley, essentially has to save herself and her mother when her mother gets kidnapped by the Breeders. And the Breeders are basically kidnapping women to experiment on them and to bring the human race back to full effect. The main character was heinously unlikable. I liked just about every other character more than her. I wanted to be reading the love interest's point of view because the love interest was great. She was horrible. And I will get more into it later, but it wasn't even like she's horrible in that she needs to be unlikable for character development. No, she was just awful. But again, I'll get into that more later. If I had to rate it, I don't think it'd be a full out 1 star. There might have been some level of redeemable qualities, but not the biggest fan. No. So maybe a 2 at best. Next up, I read Stark's Command by John G. Henry. Not Henry, I keep wanting to say Henry. This book is the sequel to a trilogy, and I didn't realize that until I had finished it. This book starts at the end of a military coup on the moon. The military was essentially led to slaughter in what is the first book by officers that just didn't care, so they rebelled and placed Ethan Stark, the Stark of Stark's Command, in charge. And so this book is him essentially trying to figure out who they are now. People on Earth about the coup, and they're not happy. The citizens of the moon colony, the non-military people, are like, hey, what about us? So this book is fairly slow burn. There's not as much action as I would assume happened in the first and third, but I still loved it. The action that there was very high paced, and the characters are incredibly likable. Ethan himself is just this low-ranking sergeant that only took the job because he wants to be that kind of leader for the other military people that he loves, and he is struggling to know exactly what to do, and how does he handle having all of this pressure of everyone basically counting on him to lead everyone. And he's very relatable, very likable, and so I will probably at some point eventually pick up the other ones in the series, because it was just that great. So the next one, I have a list here. My lovely little notebook I keep track. Oh, this one is my favorite. This one is one of the best I've read, the best self-published indie ebook I've read this month, and maybe ever, but I haven't read a lot ever. So this is Star Nomad by Lindsay Buroker. Sure. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her name. I did some research. She traditionally actually does fantasy, and this was her foray into sci-fi. Loved it. It goes on about a pilot, Elisa Marchenko, who has recently just helped win a war for this rebel alliance. And yes, that they're not actually called the Rebel Alliance, they're just called the Alliance, but I got Star Wars vibes. The war has recently just ended, but she finds herself stranded on this desert planet, discovers that her husband died during bombings of their home world, but her daughter is still there under the care of her aunt. So this is Elisa essentially trying to get back to her daughter, and ends up on her mother's old freight ship that she discovers on this desert planet with this wacky crew full of people, including a cyborg. Not the way we think of cyborgs, like he doesn't look cyborgish. All of the implants are internal, not like he's not walking around with a metal arm. That she literally just calls cyborg, like she doesn't have his real name for like most of the book. Who fought for the Empire. So she essentially is working with her old nemesis, or who would have been her enemy 2 months prior, when the war was still going on, trying to get home to her daughter. I'm pretty sure I'm guessing it ends in a romance. You could tell, but, and I liked this part, was not there. There was no big romance. It was basically just them realizing, like, hey, maybe you're not the horrible worst thing ever that destroyed the galaxy. They both realized that the other has some levels of value, that they had their own ideals for fighting it, and she finds out that even like the cyborg, which she eventually calls Leonidas, still not his real name, that he had his own ideas of why the Empire was actually useful and helpful, and why people needed it to stick around. And I loved that kind of talk of, okay, maybe the Empire wasn't wholly bad, and the Alliance wasn't wholly good, that there are some things that kind of fell through as a result of this. And I love that kind of in-depth look, that whole one side is not wholly good, one side is not wholly bad. Now, if I can find my next one, I have 2 different e-readers, and for the most part, and by the way, I did not actually buy 2 e-readers. I did not mean to get 2 e-readers. My Nook had been dead for the longest time, and my husband was nice enough to buy me a Kindle. And so after he bought me the Kindle, I finally got the e-reader to work, so I felt bad. But the next one, unfortunately, was another low point. See if it's really hard to read that. Goliath by Richard Turner. At the onset, this looked like the kind of book I live for. An old airship, a blimp from the 1930s, goes down with some big mysterious thing on it, and it resurfaces, the record resurfaces, and so everyone's chasing after it, and the military gets involved, and someone gets kidnapped. I'm like, this should have been the exact kind of book I go for. So I don't know why it fell so flat. It was so bad. Insta-love, first of all. The main character that gets kidnapped, the main female love interest, must be psychic. Never is actually said to be psychic, but there are some things that, like, there's literally no reason for her to know what she knows, but she looks at the Ryan Mitchell, the head military guy, and it's like, she could tell he was there to be he could be trusted. She looked at his face. Insta-love, first of all. Second of all, she gets kidnapped. There's an attempted kidnapping like 3 times. It only works the third. Here's the biggest issue with that. I read a lot of romance books. There's a lot of insta-love. There's a lot of female and love interest getting kidnapped in any kind of romance situation. But when the female love interest gets kidnapped, you have to show the man losing his mind. That's the entire point of it. That's why, like, thousands of women go for that setup. It's not because we like the idea of being kidnapped. It's because the man freaking out. But Ryan Mitchell didn't look like he cared. Like, honest to God, like, he barely talked about it. And then the cool thing on the blimp was a subplot. So this cool, historical artifact, while it was an interesting idea, was connected, tied to history, was supposed to be the Romanov jewels, was a subplot, and it was actually the main issue with the antagonist was about nukes. So, like, kind of misleading in the synopsis. And so the nice thing is that since so many of the ebooks I have are from BookBub, and they are the beginning of series, I always like when I can cross a series off and be like, definitely not reading that. That's one less series I have to worry about. And I probably will be deleting this off. So yeah, like I said before, this month has been the height of all ebooks can be and how wonderful they are, and the worst of all ebooks can be and how, they can sometimes prove the stereotypes correct. But this next one, and I really don't want to have to actually edit this, so y'all are going to have to deal with these transitions, and I don't even know if you can see this now that I'm trying to hold it up. Whoop. Yep, Burn So Bad by Anne Marsh. This was a cheap little romance ebook. Looked like it was the third of one of those series where every new book is another character that falls in love by the end of it. In this one, it was 3 adopted brothers that are all firefighters, or smoke jumpers. Rather, smoke jumpers, for those of you who don't know, is the men and women who basically jump from airplanes to get in the middle of a forest fire to combat it from the ground on the inside. And what I liked about this, and why this is my favorite, is that in the very beginning, the woman saves the man's life. That never happens in romance books, ever. The woman saves the man's life. And not in a saved him emotionally, saved him from his own demons nonsense way. Legit, his chute didn't deploy. He's plummeting toward the ground. She saves him from actual death. And then later on, if it comes to light that she has this heart arrhythmia issue and he's protective, and so I'm like, oh, fantastic. He's going to end up making her give up this job that she loves because he's just traditional, and I hate that in romance books. I could do an entire video on my rant of what's wrong with romance books, but why I still read them. But no. He's like, he actually learns that, like, hey, she's, loves what she does. She's good at it. You got to back off and let her be her. That doesn't happen in romance books. So Anne Marsh, thank you. And I believe this was self-published or indie published. No, published by Anne Marsh in 2013. So yes. So, yay. And it's so sad. It is so sad that for so much of it, it's like the same old thing, and that, like, there was still some issues. It was still a little bit too quick. There were still some things that didn't feel wholly not accurate, natural in the way they spoke to each other at times. But the fact that the premise was that good, I was willing to forgive everything else. And obviously, the way they felt about each other and the way that was articulated, which is really what you're looking for in a romance book, was articulated well. So all in all, I liked that. And the last one I read was at the end of the month. I was going through like a mini reader slump. Wasn't that thrilled by most of the things on my TBR. And I've got a readathon coming up in December in like a week. So I'm probably going to keep it chill for a little bit longer. But I read a poetry book Adultolescence by Gabby Hanna. I have been thinking a lot about this, and I'm probably going to do an entire review, even though it's already been out for like a year. I don't know if anyone else has reviewed it. I might be looking into that to see if I have the same opinions as some other people. But Gabby Hanna, for those of you who don't know, is a YouTuber, and this is a book written by a YouTuber in the more traditional sense of what people think of when they think book written by YouTuber. She's not a booktuber at all. She's I think you'd classify her as a storytime vlogger. She's the only storytime vlogger I actually watch, and this is the only book by a YouTuber in that sense that I will probably ever purchase or will purchase for a while. She described this as grown-up Shel Silverstein, and I love Shel Silverstein. I have Where the Sidewalk Ends proudly on my shelf. I do have some deeper thoughts because I don't know that it was entirely grown-up Shel Silverstein, at least in the way I see Shel Silverstein, and that's part of the reason I wanted to do a video on it. Also because I just love talking about poetry in general, and this was awesome. This is the kind of poetry where like you would take a picture of the poem and put it on Instagram, even though the actual kind of writing of it was Twitter-esque. Like I follow her on Twitter, and like I could totally see her tweeting these things out. But it was really nice, and it actually took me a little bit longer than I thought it would, because I thought I'll read it in a day, be done. But I actually kind of went more slowly over a couple days to read it, just so I could fully form my opinions and think through what she was trying to say, or the kind of headspace the poet was in, because poetry is very much a mood thing. So I have a lot of thoughts on that. But again, I have so many more videos coming. This month has been great for Muse, I guess, booktuber Muse. I have so many ideas coming up. I have so many other things that I have to record. Tomorrow is Sunday, and it's just going to be an insane day of me recording / doing the household chores that I need to do, because I have so many new ideas of things that I haven't really seen a lot of other people doing. So I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited for some more unique things. But yeah, so that was my November reading. I am going to make a point of reading more indie and self-published books, particularly ebooks. If you can suggest those, I would love recommendations. I would love to be the channel that shouts out those people on a regular basis, and keeps up with that area. Lindsay Broker, that's how I'll say her name, is my new favorite. So I'm definitely going to keep reading at her. I will shout her out. And she is full-time self-published, which is impressive. She puts out like 2 books a year to stay full-time self-published. So that's just insane. But thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed watching this rambling. I hope it wasn't too slow in the transitions between books. If you're not a big fan of this and you would like me to do the standard editing between clips thing, let me know. I just hate editing, but I'll always try it if that's what is preferred. So with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.